So this week, I have not been able to finish Okami, and as a result, I will not be doing a video on it this week. I will be doing a video on it next week. As many of you will know, anyone who's played Okami will know that it is a very long game, and it's not a game I'm about to talk about without finishing it, because, honestly, it gets better and better and better. And I don't know how long the game took for the developers to make, but they learn a lot. You can see it as you play the game that they've learned from mistakes they've made in earlier sections. So this week, I'll actually be talking about game length. It's a topic that Super Bunny Hop has already discussed and has done a fine video on it. There should be a link in the description to it. But it's a topic that I want to talk about because it plays into a lot of how games are even made. For starters, this isn't going to be a video on how games used to be longer and how they're really short nowadays, because that's a lie. Games have always been short, games have always been long, and I'm doing this series partially because I want to remember which games were long, which games are short, and study a bunch of other statistics that I can glean from playing them. Also, this video is purely going to be talking about single-player games. So since it's talking about single-player games, there's a lot of type of games that single players encompass. Things like shooters can be single player. Half-Life is almost purely single player. While it did have a multiplayer component, it wasn't really the main attraction of the game. And RPGs are almost all single player games, except for, I suppose, multiplayer ones, multi-massive online MMOs, but I wouldn't imagine most people would call them RPGs. They would call them MMOs, which are their own genre entirely. But being single player games, there isn't often that much replayability. While games like Binding of Isaac are entirely single player and do feature a ton of replayability, they're not doing it by telling a story over and over, they're doing it by randomizing the gameplay. So every time you play it, it's different. And that's a really important part for game length. If players are doing the same thing over and over and over, they're going to get bored very quickly and stop playing the game. Of course, randomization isn't the only way you can extend the gameplay of a single-player game. While games like Binding of Isaac extend the gameplay by randomizing what you get, games like Devil May Cry extend the gameplay by asking you to just be better and faster at the game. Which is a great thing to encourage if you're trying to encourage people to just perfect the game and learn all the systems. And that's a good way of doing it. An example is Metal Gear Solid. Pretty much all of the games are fairly easy to beat, on normal at least, but if you play on the harder difficulties, you're going to find yourself using a lot of different skills that you never found yourself using in the rest of the difficulties. And that's another great way of extending the gameplay, by asking the player to learn more and more to actually beat the game on the harder difficulties. But these methods won't work in every kind of game. RPGs are a great example of a genre that this just wouldn't work in, because people are only playing them for the story. In some cases, the systems and the gameplay just get in the way of experiencing the story as well, and when compared to movies and novels, this is kind of annoying for the average player because they just can't experience the entire story without being good at the game. And ultimately, if somebody buys a form of media, they're going to want to be able to complete it. They'll want to watch the movie in their entirety, they'll want to finish reading the book in its entirety, they'll want to finish playing the game in its entirety. If the game doesn't respect the player's time and is just throwing stuff at them to pad the game length out, then there's every reason for the player to stop playing it. And you see this all the time. Steam achievements that track how many hours people have played or where they've actually gotten the game, and you see a lot of players have not even finished the game or got halfway through it. Because there's so many games out there to play, and people just want to play them and experience lots of different things. Of course, this is why you see YouTube becoming so popular, because it lets you just watch a game without actually having to put any effort into it. I'm sure many people will be watching Halo 5 on YouTube rather than actually playing it. If they're going to buy the game, they're going to buy it for the multiplayer. Which is a great way of extending game length, but isn't single-player related, so... And this is probably why you see shorter experiences from better-paced independent titles. They want the player to be able to finish the game, and they want to throw lots of interesting scenarios at them while they do it, to keep them interested in it. Longer titles, you have to try a lot harder to keep players interested in the game. You need to give them lots of systems, you need to give them lots of quests, you need to give them breaks so they can actually take a break from the game and then come back and play. If you were to make a 12-hour long Metal Slug freestyle game, that would just be exhausting to play. And even then, if you did make a game like that, you would still have to include infinite credits or some such, so players can play through the game and die and learn from their mistakes. Having to learn the entirety of the game every time you want to actually get to the end, that's a really old strategy the NES used, and it didn't last. Lives are a bit of a stupid idea, and it's a good thing they're gone. It's a shame cheats actually are gone as well, because they were a really good way of letting players skip to the parts that they actually wanted to play or actually experience. While cheats do take a lot of the gameplay out, in single-player games I can't really see this being a problem, because, like I said, in single-player games there's only one person playing it, and if they can't cheat, then they can't finish the game sometimes. So, I imagine I'll do a video on achievements and cheats later down the line, but for now, I just wanted to do an off-script video about game length. Okami is a game that respects players' time a lot, and it's one I definitely want to finish. And I haven't decided if I want to finish every game in my library. A lot of them are very long, especially the RPGs, and I imagine a lot of them will have lots of padding, but I'll find that out eventually. For now, like I said, I just wanted to do an off-script video discussing game length. Next week is definitely going to be the Okami video. See you next time.